This happened one winter night at my friend Luke's house. We'd planned to have a sleepover since both of Luke's parents were out of town for their anniversary. It was probably about midnight when the two of us got bored and figured we'd go downstairs to the house's unfinished basement where Luke's family computer was. The computer was really old and huge in comparison to what we have today, so naturally it was also extremely slow. But we could still visit many popular websites at the time, so long as we had enough patience for them to fully load. One we would visit quite often was called Omegle. As far as I know, this site is still really popular today. It's basically an online video chat room type site where you get paired up with random strangers. You talk to someone until you get bored, and then you skip to the next person. That's all there really is to it. We did this for a few minutes and met a few different people, but nothing really of note. Now, this was around the time when Omegle first added the feature where you could input your interests and get paired up with people who put in the same interests as you. We both thought it would be funny to put in the name of our town. We did this and then clicked the start a chat button. It took a minute to find someone to connect us with, but eventually the loading circle went away and the chat showed the usual "you're now chatting with a random stranger" message. The other person's video screen was just black, which kinda caught us both off guard. The two of us both squinted our eyes and got closer to the screen. We even turned up the brightness all the way in the computer's settings, thinking it was an issue on our side. But it was still just complete blackness. Luke took over the keyboard and started typing in the chat. "Hey dude, I think you forgot to turn on your webcam." Almost instantly a reply came back. It was a link, a really long one consisting almost entirely of just random nonsense characters. If it weren't for the blue color and underline, I honestly probably would have thought it was just text. Luke moved the mouse over it and looked at me, before looking back at the screen and clicking it. A new tab opened. It was completely black, just like the guy's video feed. We started randomly clicking around the site to see if there was anything to it, though nothing happened. We clicked back to the Omegle tab and were about to ask what the site even was, but before we could, we noticed another chat message had been sent.
"I can see you guys."
Luke typed back some smart-ass response like, "Yeah, cause our camera actually works, unlike yours." I guess that did it, because a few seconds later and the loading screen once again showed up, followed by another random stranger, meaning whoever that was had disconnected the chat. We continued talking to a few other people for a while longer. Eventually, this scratching sound came from the speakers. It wasn't coming from Omegle. We started flipping through the few tabs we had opened in the hopes of finding which one was producing the sound. That's when we came to the tab we had opened earlier. It was no longer black. A video was playing, and it now looked like a road of some sort. We could even see a couple cars passing by, but there was no one else around. We continued watching as the camera began walking down the street, passing by trees and dimly lit gas stations and closed shops. Finally, the camera turned into a small suburb. My heart dropped when I recognized the location. It was about a quarter mile from where we were. The camera turned from street to street, hiding behind trees and streetlights. Our eyes were glued to the screen as we both prayed it would make a wrong turn. Finally, it rested on one house at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was Luke's house. Luke and I locked eyes with each other. We both sprinted to the top of the stairs and locked the door leading to the basement. We then turned off all the lights down there. When we returned to the computer screen, the camera was now in the backyard. It was like it was searching for something. It then stopped on a flower pot. A hand reached out in front of the camera and pulled out a hidden spare key to the house. Panicked, I held my finger on the power button to the computer and the screen went black. We now sat in complete darkness. We hid under the desk and just listened. The familiar creaking from the back door echoed out from upstairs. Heavy footsteps followed. This had to have gone on for at least 10 minutes, during which there was nothing we could do. The home phone was back upstairs. Eventually, the footsteps came right up to the downstairs door. We could hear the handle slowly turn until it was stopped by the lock. The footsteps walked away and faded into complete silence. We waited there for an hour, when finally we built up the courage to unlock the basement door and make a run for the phone. And that's exactly what we did. We made it back to the basement and relocked the door immediately. We dialed 911 and explained our situation to the operator as best as we could. To sum up the rest of the night, police showed up and searched the entire house. Nothing was found out of place or missing. Well, nothing but the spare key in the backyard. That was still gone. Luke's parents were informed of the break-in, and in the end, all they did was change all the locks on the doors to their house. To be honest, I don't think they really ever fully understood the whole situation, or what we saw that night. Luke and I haven't used any kind of online random chat room ever since. I was 16 and had just gotten my license when this happened. Back then, I used to spend a lot of my nights online in different chat rooms around the internet. This was back when old school chat rooms were all the rage. One room I visited frequently was a chat room specifically for users in my local area. This is where I first met a girl named Julie. We spent a few nights chatting and getting to know each other. I soon sent her a picture of what it looked like and she did the same. I won't lie, I was really into her. She was definitely my type. This went on for maybe 2 weeks until one night in particular. We were texting back and forth like usual when she asked me to come over. She lived about an hour away, but like I said, I had just gotten my license and I actually liked her, so I jumped at the chance to meet her in person. The plan was that I would pick her up at her house and from there we'd go to IHOP, because it was already late and that was pretty much the only place around there that stayed open 24 hours. I got ready and started making the drive to the address she gave me. I was both excited and nervous at the same time. The whole drive took a bit longer than expected, but sure enough, I soon arrived at her place. It was an old farmhouse in what felt like the exact middle of a cornfield. This wasn't uncommon where I lived. I guess I was just a bit confused as to how the house got internet way out here. I walked up to the porch and knocked on the front door. A light quickly turned on from inside and the front door opened. The person standing in front of me was not Julie. Rather, it was some guy much bigger than me who I'd never seen before. I told him I was here to pick up Julie. He nodded his head and introduced himself as her dad. The only problem is the guy looked like he was still in college. Regardless, I shook his hand and introduced myself. He gestured me inside, and me wanting to make a good impression, I walked in. We sat down in the dining room of the house, and I asked him if Julie was here. At first, he dodged the question, but after asking a couple more times, he told me she was at work and would be home in a few minutes. Our conversation then veered towards where I live, but he wasn't exactly asking me. He was more so speaking in a way as to confirm this information which I had only told Julie. I started legitimately sweating and nervously looking around. That's when I saw two silhouettes walking past one of the windows outside near the back of the house. I could tell the man knew I was suspicious, so right then and there I shot up without saying a word and sprinted outside and back to my parked car. There's no doubt I was chased, but I was much faster than the guy. I got in my car and pushed the pedal to the floor back the way I came. Just as I was gaining speed, my headlights revealed a shiny silver object over the floor of the road in front of me. It was a spike strip. I swerved towards the cornfield and somehow was able to miss it. I got back on the road and looked in my rearview mirror. 3 silhouettes were chasing me, but slowed pace when they saw that I missed the strip. I got back to a main road, and the harrowing reality that Julie wasn't real, and that I could have almost just been killed slowly started to set in. When I got home, I had one new message from Julie's account. "Where'd you go? Come back." I didn't respond to this message. I was in my second year of college at the time. I lived with my dog at a small cheap house that wasn't too far away from my school's campus. I had planned to live with a few other friends to help cut down on the rent, but shortly before the school year started, those plans fell through. The isolation was manageable, it's just the amount of rent I had to pay that was slowly killing me. Anyway, back then, online chat room websites were really in their prime. Audio and even video sites were slowly becoming a normal thing. Ever since I got my laptop for school, I would often use it to visit these sites. I met a lot of different people, some who I still call good friends to this day. One night, I got home from one of my night classes, and like usual got on my laptop to join voice chats in servers with people that had similar interests as me. This went on for a while, until after a couple hours when I met a guy called Chris. We talked for around 45 minutes, just general college stuff, nothing too specific. It turns out he went to one of my school's rival schools, which gave us a lot to talk about. At one point, I casually mentioned how my computer was acting up. Chris told me he was studying IT and offered to help me fix the issue. I agreed, and he gave me a link telling me to install the application it led me to. I was unfamiliar with the site, but nothing about it yelled sketchy, so I installed it. Chris walked me through a few extra steps. It was a weird experience. The application allowed him to literally control my mouse and do whatever he needed to on my computer. I sat back and watched as he got to work trying to fix the issue. After a while, I had to step out to let my dog back inside the house for the night. I was gone for only a few minutes. Just as I stepped back in my room, I noticed something on the laptop quickly being closed out. I dismissed it as Chris just doing what he needed to do. I asked him if the issue was fixed, and he said yeah, that it was. I thanked him and told him I was going to go to bed, because it was now starting to get really late. I thought he was actually pretty cool, so before I left, we scheduled another time to talk. After that, I closed out of everything, put my laptop to sleep, and went to bed. I slept for a few hours. When I opened my eyes, it was still dark outside. I checked the time. 3:30 a.m. My whole room was lit up by my laptop screen, which I believe is what woke me up. I sat up, trying to understand how it could have turned on by itself. I got out of bed and sat down in front of the screen. It was just sitting there on the desktop showing my background. I tried to move the mouse to put it back to sleep, but it wasn't responding. The mouse was frozen. Frustrated, I began continually clicking the mouse trying to unfreeze it. Nothing was working. An image then popped up and covered the whole screen. It was dark. My eyes had to take a second to adjust to it. Soon I realized that it was a picture of my empty room, like as if the laptop's camera had taken it. I pressed the escape key. I even tried Ctrl-Alt-Delete, but none of it was doing anything. Then another image appeared. This time it was a picture of me. It looked like it had just been taken. My heartbeat was picking up speed and was getting louder in my ears. I finally looked up at the laptop's camera. The small light next to it was now on, indicating that it was being used. Then a video appeared on the screen with a play button in the middle of it. It was me again, now with a horrified expression on my face. The mouse started moving by itself towards the play button. It clicked it and the video started as I desperately put one hand over the camera and the other holding the power button. I held the power button for about 15 seconds when one final image appeared on the screen. It only showed for a brief second before the laptop finally powered off and the screen went black, but I could still tell exactly what the image was of. It was a low-quality picture of the outside of my house in the dark. I sat there frozen, taking in what I had just seen. Breaking the silence was the sound of my dog aggressively barking from downstairs. Knowing my dog rarely ever does this, I panicked at the thought of someone trying to break into my house. This would never end up happening, however. My dog's barking slowly stopped and the rest of the night was just silence. The next morning, I moved all of my stuff into a hotel and stayed there until I found a new place to live, purely out of fear that someone would come back to that house. I never talked to Chris again, and I still don't know what was done to that laptop. I had school files on that thing that weren't backed up, but I couldn't bring myself to turn it back on. I accepted that they were gone. I ended up setting that laptop on fire and burning it completely.